Welcome to Howzat Fans, the ultimate video podcast for cricket lovers who eat, sleep and breathe the game. Whether you're a diehard fan of test matches, a T20 thrill seeker or just love the sound of leather on willow, this is your home for all things cricket. Each episode, we bring you expert analysis, legendary stories and exclusive insights from players, coaches and fans from around the world. From epic match recaps to behind-the-scenes scoops, we've got you covered. So grab your bat, settle in, and let's dive into the world of cricket.
Jamie Alter, welcome to Howzat Fans.
Thank you, Trevor.
Pleasure to have you.
Likewise.
Yeah? What brings you to Dubai?
Cricket. I'm a cricket journalist, among a few other things. Been doing this for coming up to 20 years, and there's a little tournament called the ICC Champions
Just a
Trophy
little.
going. Just a very little one, which seems a bit stretched out, but I'm sure we'll discuss that as this chat goes on.
So, fascinated by you. Obviously, I've only met you for 2 hours. Literally, we met at breakfast, didn't we, this morning? We were introduced by a mutual friend of ours in the industry. And it struck me your accent, which I'm sure is one of your unique features.
Story in my life.
Indeed. And I'm sure everyone talks about it. So, you have an Indian accent.
I do. I'm a fourth generation American, born and raised in India. 1916, my great grandfather landed up in those parts, and my grandfather was settled there. My father was born in India. As you can tell from my accent, I was born in India. My son is born in India, and so when you connect the dots like that, it's not so alarming to figure out why there's a white guy with this accent covering cricket in Dubai.
Yeah. So I understand it. I've just done some quick research on you, that your father's a bit of a legend in India. And my question is, what's it like following a legend?
It's an honor, obviously, but it comes with a lot of expectations. My father acted in Hindi movies, various Indian language movies for over 45 years. So the moment the average Indian, she sees the last name, they do make that connection. So it's an honor. It's a legacy I have to try and take forward. The good thing is I'm not anywhere near as good an actor as he was. I dabble now in the last couple of years, but my main bread and butter comes from talking cricket. So my father did in fact dabble. He moonlighted as a journalist as well, and he was the first person to interview Sachin Tendulkar in front of a camera. So the average Indian fan does know that as well. So sometimes that comparison gets thrown around with me, but look, I have everything I am and everything I've learned comes from my father. So sure. He's not around anymore, but he's watching and saying, well done.
Yeah, indeed, well done. So let's go back onto cricket. So you are a freelance journalist, and how long have you been in the game?
It'll be coming up to 20 years in October of this year. I began with ESPN Cricinfo. It was Cricinfo back then. It wasn't ESPN Cricinfo. So my bread and butter was the 4.5 years I was there. Then I worked at Network 18. I was the editor of 2 sports websites there. I was the digital sports editor of the Times of India. I was the digital sports editor at Z, which is another big Indian media house. And one fine day I said, you know what? This is fun, but maybe there's something else in there. So I went the freelance way. I did some YouTubing, some podcasting, some acting.
Acting?
Yes, I actually...
Okay, Bollywood acting?
Bollywood acting,
Can
yes.
you dance?
I cannot dance to save my life. I had one brief ballroom dance scene when I tried to get out of the camera. No, I love Bollywood. I love Hindi movies, but yeah, I'm not cut out for the dancing. So,
you're right.
Yes, long story short, coming up to 20 years doing the kind of things you and I are doing right now.
Okay, so why cricket though?
I think, look, my father was a sports nut. I don't think there's any sport which he wouldn't have at least tried his hand at. But you can understand, growing up in India, where, with all due respect to all the other sports, it's unfortunate that they haven't got the recognition that cricket has. But growing up, seeing cricket, hearing cricket on the radio, hearing stories from my father and his brother about fantastic West Indian, Pakistani, Indian, Australian, British cricketers, I was bound to get sucked into it somehow. So, I think all of us tried to play cricket to a certain level, and I think it's the story of countless journalists. When you cannot crack the game as a player, what's the next best thing? You talk about it, and you get paid to talk about it. So is there a better job? I don't know.
I would say possibly not. There isn't a better job in that respect. Just in terms of your journey, so which would you say is your favourite team?
I mean, obviously, growing up in India and watching many great Indian players and teams down the line, the first answer would be India. But my first editor at Cricinfo, Mr. Sambit Bal, he tried to get us rookie journalists to detach the fan from inside us so that it wouldn't seep into our writing and our coverage. I struggled with the concept initially, but then in 2007, when India had that disastrous first round exit from the One Day World Cup in the West Indies, I realized what he meant. So of course, I mean, we'll follow the Indian team. We'll want them to do well, but I've always had a soft spot for the Kiwis, for the Black Caps.
Okay.
So if it's not India, I'll always be rooting for New Zealand.
Okay. So New Zealand has this all-encompassing, multifunctional team. You know, great athletes from a fielding perspective, great batsmen, you know, with tremendous amount of flair and great skill in terms of their bowling. And obviously it comes to mind Trent Boult, etc., who's done really well in South Africa, franchise cricket. Recently we saw him for Mumbai Indians, etc. So I can totally endorse and understand why you'd go for Black Caps, you know, and they're one of my favourite teams as well in the world. So just coming full circle and back to this particular tournament, do you see, based on the last two performances, India recognised as the favourites to win the actual ICC Champions Trophy?
I would say yes, and to be very honest to you and your viewers, I was saying that even before we found out that Australia are going to be 5 men down for this tournament. It's not because they've just sort of patented how to play bilateral one-day cricket. It's because I look at this tournament with all due respect, and I just don't see enough quality teams. Yeah. Then you factor in the most obvious advantage that Rohit Sharma's team has, and that is the fact that they're based here in Dubai for the duration of their tournament. So the selectors, the coach, the captain, they can choose a team for Dubai, which frankly, no other team can do that. There's no travel involved. And then you look at Australia, I mean, they're down arguably their best fast bowling trio in Hazelwood, Cummins and Stark. Yeah. I wasn't too concerned about Stoinis because he hasn't done too much in one-day cricket to impress me at least. And Mitchell Marsh can be great, but he's also injury prone. But when I saw that Cummins, Hazelwood and Stark were not going to be there, I said this is India's tournament to lose, because the only team which can beat them, but there's two teams which can beat India. It's India themselves by botched up selection on the day, which I frankly don't think is going to be a case here. And then it's the Black Caps for the reasons you just outlined yourselves. So, yeah.
I would have liked to have thought I'd add a third team to that. That isn't the case at this moment in time. I would have added Pakistan. And the reason why I would have added Pakistan is because of the fact that they are the main host. They're the ones that had to travel to Dubai. So I would have thought that they would have had the desire, the real get up and go as to why we need to beat India. Why we really need to beat India. Because surely they must be thinking, we're hosting, India's not coming, we have to travel and bow down to India's demands and go to Dubai. So therefore that would give us greater motivation to actually want to beat India. But I was quite disappointed the way they folded, to be perfectly honest, a couple of days ago in Dubai National Stadium. I know you were there, so what was your view?
Look, I wasn't as optimistic as you were about Pakistan's chances, because not just because I find it a very overhyped broadcaster-driven rivalry, or because India are now 18-4 when it comes to matches against Pakistan across IC events, but I just look at Pakistan as a whole, where their country's at, with all due respect, where their cricketing system is at, and just the lack of players. I mean, we've been discussing this. I've been parked here in Dubai now for a week now almost. In fact, a week, yes. And you speak to the expat Pakistanis, you speak to the Pakistani journalists who were based here or who came over here, they weren't optimistic. So when they're not optimistic, where does it leave the likes of us who are just looking in from the outside, But I find they just don't have the batsmen. And I know it's been said, Trevor, many times in the last 2 weeks that losing someone like a Saim Ayub disrupted their plans. But I'm like, losing a kid who's 22 or 23 has disrupted your plans. Surely you had backup plans. So again, I'm not optimistic. I had India down to smash them weeks before this match happened. It's just because, I mean, look at this. Jasprit Bumrah is not here. India's greatest multi-format fast bowler, as far as I'm concerned, he's not even here. And are India missing him? No, because Pakistan are so abject. England, I don't know what's happened with them. You probably can shed more light on that than I can.
Well, recently, obviously, they were in India, and they played in some of the 50 over matches as well as the T20s.
Yep.
And it would appear from the outside looking in that they weren't really interested. You know, the performance was lackluster, and that's saying the very least. It would appear as though they looked tired, they looked jaded, and they were thinking, what the hell are we doing here, to be frank? So I feel that now coming to this particular tournament, there's been a zest to try and do well. And obviously they fell short against Australia recently with a fantastic run chase. But I feel as though that there is a greater motivation now that we are in this tournament. But I just have this feeling that the cricket world is not really interested in this particular tournament. I don't see the crowds at all in Dubai, although on the ICC website prior to the start of this tournament, it continually said that these matches were sold out. I was in the stadium for the match between India and Bangladesh, and I can categorically tell you it was less than half full, although at periodic times on the ICC website, again, it had said that this match was sold out. So I think it's quite misleading. And I think it's absolutely wrong that they should say that when the reality is there is not enough interest.
Yeah. No, you're spot on. I mean, you were in the stands, I'm in the press box looking down, and you can see. You're wondering, okay, a fourth, a third, and then by the time the sun went down, you could say maybe at best half full, but that speaks about the audience, their capacity. It speaks about
the cost. I think
the cost, yes.
I think incredibly expensive. I think for what it is and the time and the scheduling of it all, I think it's incredibly expensive to want the audience, supporters to be spending that type of money to go and watch mediocre cricket, in my view, to miss matches. And I think ICC really need to really look at themselves. We were recently in South Africa for the T20 final up in Joburg, and there was a complete difference in terms of the look and feel of the actual tournament and the audience. So, for example, what we did see is so many youngsters, I'm talking about teenagers, between the ages of 11 and, say, 15 in groups, male and female, walking around the ground as though they're going to a local disco, a concert, but they were here for cricket. That is the future. That is the present. But yet still, when you come to Dubai, unfortunately, what you see is predominantly 99% men, and I would say probably 30 plus. And if you're going to see little kids, they're kids that need to be with them, as opposed to teenagers, or you hardly see any women, which for me is incredibly disappointing, especially when you're trying to broaden the audience of cricket. It's absolutely imperative to have females there, and I didn't see that representation. So immediately, when I compared South Africa, and not only in Joburg, we also went down to Newlands in Cape Town, and again, it was a similar thing. You saw so many females of all different ranges, all different races, and it was so refreshing. But when you come here, it feels as though you've gone back in time, you know, where females are not allowed or not directed to as an audience. I mean, I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, well, first of all, that's a fantastic comparison that you've just given with South Africa. That's T20 cricket, that's franchise cricket, and I think a lot of the success of the T20 format has because it's opened up a traditional game with all the downsides you've just mentioned to a younger audience, to women, to young kids. I look at, again, this is not just the ICC. I think the BCCI and other boards have to be held accountable. What are they doing, or let's say the people who run the game, beyond T20s, beyond franchise cricket, what are they doing to attract the under 10 population? It's almost like they don't really care about kids 10 and below, you know. Is that a problem with one-day cricket? Yes. Is that a problem of the location of this, where we are right now? Absolutely. Why are we in Dubai? I mean, why should an ICC event of this status be played in Dubai, where, let's face it, beyond tax-saving reasons, I mean, do the locals care about cricket? You can go on until the cows come home about the expat community, but like you said, was the Bangladesh and Indian expat community coming up for that first match? No. India-Pakistan, I would say it was near on full, but I frankly expected, for many reasons, to see a lot more green Pakistan jerseys.
Yeah.
They were outnumbered
3-1.
absolutely,
Yeah.
if not more. So it's something that ICC has to look at. And again, because we're talking about a Champions Trophy, which is a 50-over format. I just have worried about this format for years, and looking at all the reasons you mentioned, what I've seen being parked here for the last 1 week, and looking again, the next one-day World Cup is 2.5 years from now, 27. Again, it's being held in one of the best places, South Africa. I expect good crowds there, but you can call me a doomsdayer. I'm looking at 2031 and wondering, will that be the last one-day World Cup? Will 27 be the last relevant one-day World Cup? It might well be.
Well, quite clearly they need to go back to the drawing board, and to understand exactly what would be the best way to reinvigorate this particular format of the game, because at this moment in time it's dying a death, that's for sure. So just moving on, you've obviously interviewed high-profile cricketers in your illustrious 20 years. And you notice I put the word illustrious.
You're being very kind. He's being very kind.
Doesn't he sound a bit Irish? You sound a bit Irish.
I have got the Irish. See, I was just telling someone, he's an Indian guy, we've known each other for years, but this is the first time that he's seen me at an ICC event on the job and getting this kind of reaction. So he's like, Jamie, I've heard your stories, but now I'm seeing it. Like Shikhar Dhawan, Mr. ICC.
Yeah. He lives in Dubai, doesn't he? Now
He's got a restaurant. I think he has, because he was talking about that. So he'd come over to meet a few of us journalists during the India-Pakistan game, because he's the tournament ambassador or whatever. And as it happened,
just on him, I've got a horrible story about him trying to break my hand. I interviewed him in 2021. And he grabbed my hand with such force. I thought he was going to break my wrist. So Shikhar Dhawan, if you're watching, I remember what you did to my hand. Yeah, sorry.
So as happens with me many times, and will happen for many years, I'm the one white guy with a bunch of Indians and Pakistanis. The questions are in Hindi. He's answering in Hindi.
Yeah.
But I'm sort of in his eye line, and I'm nodding. The guy stops his reply mid-sentence and says, in Hindi, he says, "You're shaking your head like you get what I'm saying." Right. You do get what I'm saying. It's just one of those cases where I stand out. But I've been asked, "Are you Irish? Are you Scottish? Are you Dutch?" And it's everywhere I go. You can understand the white guy in India speaking Hindi gets a lot of heads turning. It's actually worse when I go overseas, because I'm at a Starbucks or a Panera Bread in Boston or Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and the poor American person behind the counter just, "Could you just say that again?" In my head, I've asked for a latte and a sandwich normally, but it's not normal for them. So, but I know I stand out wherever I go.
So, in terms of who you've interviewed, first of all, who's been your favourite interview? And then, secondly, who's been your worst? NDA. Let me sign it for you.
I'm gonna lose my. No, I'm just kidding. Let's start with the best. Look, I've had the fortune of interviewing a lot of good people, fun people. I would say just for the character he was back then, before he became the Rohit Sharma we all know. I think Rohit Sharma was one that stands out.
Was that in India or English?
It was in India.
Right.
It was
in Hindi or English.
It was in. It was for an English magazine, but
so.
I asked a lot of the questions in Hindi because I have the advantage of getting a translator. This was 2010, so he was not the Rohit Sharma that became, but he was big enough. People knew on the local Mumbai circles and he played for India. I think he was in his 3rd or 4th year as an Indian cricketer. It was
because he's been in the game 17 years now.
At least I think he made his debut in 6 or 7. So he'd been around, but he wasn't that player. And even then, despite not being the man who scored 3 double centuries and led India to a T20 World Cup win, he was still a big enough name. But I just found him refreshing because he was talking the way we're talking. He didn't know me. For your viewers, this was an era where it was much easier to get access to players. You just dropped a line to their message, to their manager. You said where you were from. So this was sort of the time when things were changing, but I was still relevant enough.
They were still accessible. I mean, they're almost, they are superstars in India and also globally.
Absolutely.
The powerhouse.
So
Rohit Sharma obviously was your favourite then. Who's been your worst?
Just trying to. Michael Vaughan had come down to India, Bangalore, was still an active England cricketer, but had come down in some capacity at what used to be the National Cricket Academy in Bangalore for some exchange program. And I was working for Cricinfo, and I was based at the time in Bangalore, and our office was barely a kilometer and a half down from the stadium. So we knew that he was coming, so I was sent to go. And I thought I I had done my research and I was fine, and I was given barely 10 minutes. But he sort of cuts me off in my second question and says,
Wow.
"You should have done your homework. Your stats don't match." Obviously, I'm not a rookie reporter, but
Yeah.
I'm on the cusp where I could seem like I'm a naive person.
Sure.
But I was 110%. I've come from Cricinfo. I wouldn't have been sent out of the office if I didn't have every question. So I knew I was in the right, but probably the way I asked the question, and they'd been on a losing streak that time. The question was something about his captaincy record in Asia, but he just chose to just knock that off. And so I mean, it didn't go on very much longer. Probably another 5 questions. But
Did that throw you off?
at the time, yes, at
Yeah.
the time. But then I went back and I think we had a couple glasses of juice in the evening at the press club, and I said, "Yeah, it's okay, it happens." But so again, worse, only because I haven't had that kind of interaction. You know,
Sure.
You've been intimidated, you've been thrown off, you've been made to wait, but you've never been sort of dismissively cut off like that. So it probably stuck with me for a week or so. But
What I will say is that Michael Vaughan has form, in that I remember a distinct true story about him having some kind of disciplinary issue, and Clive Lloyd was the match referee, and Clive Lloyd actually quoted in saying that he found Michael Vaughan quite disrespectful when he was talking to him about the offence. So he has
Clive
form.
Lloyd is saying,
Yeah, absolutely. Uncle Clive Lloyd. So he has form. So it doesn't surprise me, in actual fact. Moving on. So who would you like to interview going forward?
Oh, that's a good question. So many names come to mind. I would like to sit down with Joss Butler and ask him things. I would like to sit down with Harry Brook. I would Pat Cummins just for what he's done to the game. These three for now, just because we're talking about an Australian team which is down 5 men, and we're talking about an England team that just doesn't seem to know what to do in the one-day format. So right now, for the context of where we are, these 3 names stand out.
Okay. So we're planning to travel to India for parts of the IPL in the forthcoming weeks. Where would you recommend somebody as a fan going to watch IPL cricket? Where would you recommend that they base themselves?
Mumbai, for obvious reasons, but it's an expensive city. But I believe, with all due respect to other cities and centers, you'll get a vibe of Indian cricket like you won't get anywhere else in Mumbai.
Okay.
And I'm sure you penciled in Mumbai as a place.
Describe in terms of, you say you get a vibe, not only obviously on match day,
Sure.
but you're talking about in and around the city?
Yes.
Right.
Different fans. Chennai has fantastic fans, and that's probably the second best place. And I'm sure you've got that marked down, because IPL, the first city that comes to mind is Chennai, because of Chennai Super Kings, the yellow
army,
yellow
Yes.
army, and MS Dhoni. But a place like Bombay, also, Trevor, where the Wankhede Stadium is located, it's one of the best places in Mumbai because it's cosmopolitan. You've got the sea right there. There's a lovely stretch called the Queen's Necklace. It's called Marine Drive. And literally, I think 2 blocks down is the Brabourne Stadium, which used to be a test venue before the Wankhede was built. So in a 2-block radius, you've got 2 fantastic international stadiums. Getting in and out of these stadiums, unlike many other Indian venues, is not a pain. The audience is just very knowledgeable.
Right.
They will support the visiting team. So I've always had a fun time at the Wankhede Stadium. And like I said, Chennai fans are, I don't know if you remember, but when Pakistan beat India in a test match in 1999 there, when Sachin Tendulkar almost got them over the line, but back spasms ended his innings. And for a Pakistan team to beat India and then get a standing ovation from the crowd, maybe it's a cliche now, things have changed, but for me that'll always stand out. And I've covered India, West Indies at the Chennai ground, and I found that, you know, even the respect that Brian Lara and his team got back. You expect Brian Lara,
Yes,
because
of course.
he's loved around the world.
What he's achieved.
But I think Mumbai and Chennai are 2 places, with all due respect, that you should definitely park yourself.
Great stuff. And in terms of food, you know, India, with all the spices, globally renowned for its lovely curries, etc. what would you say is your favourite food in actual fact?
Street. I have a soft corner for street food.
But you're based in Delhi, aren't you?
I'm based in Delhi, but fortunately, Mumbai and Delhi are two of the greatest, and Calcutta to an extent, are some of the greatest places for street food. Okay, I wouldn't suggest someone landing up for the first time to necessarily go and try the street food, but things which are just made off a frying pan. Spicy, mainly vegetarian food, because I wouldn't have like non-veg food off the road, even despite spending most of my life there. But Mumbai, Delhi, spices, the flavors, the range. I think these two places, with all due respect to other places, I've had the most fun.
Okay, that's interesting because I'm very much a lover of foods from the East, and I can't wait to go to India. I've got so many Indian friends, and actually, in fact, family as well. And my heritage is Guyana, South America, and they have a strong population from India, so therefore we grew up on the very same food. So it really would be nice to go and see and taste food at source. Okay, so Jamie, what next for you after this length of time in cricket?
What next for me? In the immediate, I have to go back to Delhi, and I have a small web series shoot at the end of the month, and which clashes with the IPL. But like you said, the IPL starts 10-12 days after this, so we're doing that. I think I'll be based in Delhi. I might do a couple Mumbai games, but then what I'm looking forward to is the 5-test series between India and England starting in the
UK.
In the UK,
yeah. So you're coming over, are you?
I plan to. So
cool.
I think we'll do another episode there probably.
Indeed, I'd love to show you around.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. On that note, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Likewise.
Really appreciate you taking the time out. And we've only met 2 hours.
At breakfast? At the same table,
Indeed,
I think,
indeed.
or one of these tables?
This table.
Pleasure.
All right. All the best.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you very much.
And that's a wrap for this episode of Howzat Fans. A huge thank you to our sponsor, Stump Zone, the #1 indoor cricket facility in London. Whether you're sharpening your skills, training with your team, or just having a hit, Stump Zone is the perfect place to play. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with your fellow cricket fanatics. Got a topic you want us to cover or a question for our next guest? Hit us up on socials at Howzat Fans or drop us an email at trev@howzatfans.com. Until next time, keep your eyes on the ball, your passion for the game high, and remember, cricket never stops.